Peak outdoor moments, these experiences that take us out of the ordinary and out of our comfort zone, are often the easier ones to remember.
Hey y'all, welcome back to The Struggle. It's me, Ryan. I am psyched that you're here, and I hope you're having an awesome day. I'm having a good day. I'm feeling sore. I am sore all over my body. Body sore, heart happy, and that is because I just got back, as I'm recording this, from a trip out to Portland, where I hung out with the incredible crew at the Portland Rock Gym in Beaverton, as well as Emil Abrahamson. We did all sorts of stuff. I mean, we shot 6 videos. We bouldered, we lead climbed, we hosted a competition between Emil and the Youth Crushers over at the PRG gym, and also did like a grip competition. It was crazy. It was the most whirlwind couple of days at the gym, and I'll talk a little bit more about that on my monthly plug here because I had some major gym breakthroughs. Like, I'm really psyched. I've climbed the hardest boulders, the 2 hardest boulders I've ever climbed, I was able to do there. And I think it's because Emil was there to push me and to support me, and also very much to coach me because I was climbing boulders that were kind of out of my style, you know, some more like dynamic, flowy, I guess they could be considered like more comp style boulders, or at least kind of leaning that way. Anyway, things I wouldn't typically put myself on. But God, I was psyched because I climbed really hard. I climbed 2 V7s in the gym. I've never climbed a V7 in the gym. These were consensus V7s. The members vote on them. And anyway, I'm really proud of that. Forget the grade. Just like went out, had fun, tried hard. And then we went to Smith. We went out to Smith Rock, and it was just like one of those pinch me weekends. Was out there with a great crew of people. My friends Johan and April, and then Emil and his partner Cordelia came out. And then we met up with Alan Watts out there. And Alan Watts, I'm sure that's a name a lot of you recognize, but some of you may not. He is the father of sport climbing here in America. He bolted pretty much everything at Smith Rock. He put the first wrap bolts in and worked routes on bolts here. He was kind of this pariah, if you will, of climbing for quite a while, as the old school ground up ethic had this head-on collision with new school style of bolting and climbing and hang-dogging and working routes that had been going over in Europe. But Alan, as he explained to me over a beer after we climbed together on the first day, he wasn't aware of any of that. So he was just kind of like in his own world, pioneering this new style that now is the style, right? So like that's what I predominantly do. I love trad climbing. I love multi-pitch. I really enjoy bouldering, but I predominantly sport climb. I start at the ground and I clip bolts, and then I hang on bolts and I work out routes. And anyway, I'm going to be talking with Alan for the show, so I won't go into much of that right now, but I will say that it was just an absolutely unforgettable weekend. And so, Alan, if you're listening, which I'm sure you probably are not, I just wanted to say thank you, man. It was just one of the most memorable experiences of my climbing life. And also Emil and Cordelia, and just to everybody out in Portland, as well as out at Smith, for being so welcoming. I got my butt kicked on that style out there at Smith, a little techie, a little more vert than I'm accustomed to, but did a 4-pitch multi-pitch with Alan. That was, you know, I think it goes like 5.9 or something like that. It was not hard climbing, but it was just absolutely stunning. And to be swinging leads with the absolute legend himself was unforgettable. And I think that ties in really well to this conversation here with Sanni Honnold. Now, you probably know Sanni. She's quite famous from the movie Free Solo. She and Alex were dating during that movie. I don't think they were married at that time, but have since gotten married and now have a couple of wonderful kids. They live out in Vegas. I've spent quite a bit of time with them. And Sanni is a co-founder of Outwild, which is this awesome company that offers retreats and online as well as in-person group work to bring more adventure and intentionality into our lives and build community around that. Sanni's also a life coach and has been for many years. She focuses on communication and transitions, so like big life transitions. And she's just a wonderful human being. She's like an absolute freaking ray of sunshine every time I see her. She's incredibly welcoming, and she brings that positivity and those insights that she has developed over her many years now in this field to this conversation today, which basically came around because I wanted to explore this intersection of performance and joy and community and communication as it relates to me and all of us as climbers. How can we have better experiences at the gym, at the crag, and with our friends? And Sanni brings all of that. And one of the things that you'll hear her talk about is the importance of planning some adventures and not thinking too much about them, but just getting out and doing it. And that was my experience out at Smith. I didn't have time to plan a lot because I was planning so much for the Portland trip. So I just went out to Smith with an open mind, and good shit happened. It was just so beautiful just to kind of go out there and be open to hopping on whatever. And we did hop on whatever. I don't even know the names of the routes. I got to go look them up. But it was a great adventure. And she talks a lot about how all of us, whether we're super busy professionals or parents or students, or, we don't have a whole lot of time in our lives, which I think is probably most of us, how we can push ourselves past analysis paralysis and just say yes to an adventure. Like, just pick one and go. And she has some like really actionable and kind of funny ways to do that. And in fact, after she and I had this conversation, I did my own version of that. And I'll tell you about it on the back end here, but I basically planned an entire out west adventure for my family this summer in 2 hours, which I'm psyched on. Now it's done. I don't have to think about it anymore. I just planned it. So anyway, I'll tell you more about that on the backside here. But first, let's get intentional about saying yes to adventure and bringing more joy into our climbing lives with Sanni Honnold.
I was talking to Alex and I was like, should I use your mic? And he was like, oh, well, what are you recording through? And I was like, it says Riverside. And then he was like, well, Riverside will record on his computer. So actually the mic won't make. I was like, wow, you've actually learned so much about podcasting. I was like, I feel like I never give him credit for these things. Like, I'm still like, you don't know anything about snow. Like, you're not really a snow guy. Like, he's always like, well, right. I mean, I have done a lot of stuff in the mountains. I'm like, no, I don't think you really know about that. I'm like, oh, you actually know a lot about podcasting, as it turns out.
Remember, that 2 months I was in Antarctica, there was some snow there. You sound great. Yeah, I mean, the mic would have been fine too. It would work. It does record to my computer ultimately. It first records on your computer, then it comes to my computer. But This sounds great. We're good. Are the girls running around? Or June, is she in preschool right now?
Yeah, June's at school. She's at she's at daycare. She's about to transition to preschool. And then Summer hypothetically is going down for her nap right now. So, but our nanny's here, so we should be good.
Right on. Okay. Well, look, again, if you need to run out or whatever, let me know.
Thank you. Yeah, so you edit it together, or is it just like long form stream of consciousness recording here?
It's basically, yes. It's just a conversation that I'll, end up sharing, but I do edit the conversations. So I often go on like weird tangents that I just cut out because I'm like, stop talking, Ryan. They're not here to hear you talk. Or
I'm here to hear you talk. Don't worry.
I appreciate that. It's going to turn into a therapy session real quick, Sanni.
Oh, I love that for you. Let's do it.
It's interesting. I spend the bulk of my podcasting life talking with like super driven elite athletes and coaches. And that's great because like I'm psyched on performance climbing and getting better and training. And I like to geek out over all that stuff. But then every once in a while, I need to remind myself like, oh, this is kind of like your outlet. This is your joy. And maybe stop stressing out so much about like trying to get better. And so it's been on my mind for a while to want to start peppering in conversations about just the joy of being outdoors and climbing and community. And I've been watching like all the cool stuff that you're doing with Outwild. I've attended some of the online workshops that you've done, and you're a mom and you're also like a hell of a climber and an adventurer, but also you're like a real human being. And so I think it just seems fitting to have this conversation here with you about all of this. And I hope that's an okay characterization of like your relationship with climbing and outdoor activities.
No, absolutely. Yeah.
Good. Well, we can just let this wander where it goes, but we're going to enter in through the lens of struggle, Sanni, because it's the struggle climbing show. And so we like to first dig into and explore struggle. And so I want to ask you about your relationship with climbing and what does struggle mean to you as a climber?
Ooh. My relationship with climbing has changed a lot over the years. I mean, there's through lines, but it's changed a lot over the years. I mean, I think my struggle with climbing has probably my biggest struggle when I think of struggle and climbing, the thing that comes to mind the most is overcoming fear was probably my biggest kind of struggle journey with climbing because it was just such a big, obvious barrier. And it's like it's a bit of an indirect thing to tackle. Whereas like learning to
Right.
climb is kind of direct, you kind of know when you've succeeded, overcoming my fear. Or I don't even want to say overcoming because I don't think fear is just something that you overcome or not, but learning to climb with my fear and learning to climb through my fear has been probably like the biggest struggle part of my climbing experience. And I just think that understanding fear is a little bit of a less direct journey than just learning to climb, which felt pretty straightforward to me. And not that I'm an expert climber, or not that climbing isn't nuanced, or that there's many ways to train and grow, but it just felt like there was like a point A and a point B. And I think the fear part has been much more ambiguous and wildly different, and understanding when I was afraid and why I was afraid and what fear was reasonable and what fear wasn't reasonable. Like becoming a good enough climber to understand risk and when there was actually risk and when there wasn't risk. And I'm sure you've
Right.
probably talked to a lot of people about those things on the show, but that for me, that was probably my biggest struggle with climbing.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you sharing that. I share that as well. It's been a multi-year journey to try to kind of recognize my fear of falling and work through it and understand why certain days I'm more scared than others. And it's part of the reason that the sport is so exciting and dynamic is because of that. Like you get to kind of examine like these emotions and these thoughts and whether they're rational or not, and these tools to address them. So it's part of what makes climbing special, but also for me at least, and it sounds like for you, it was also, it was really holding me back in terms of how I could perform or just what the overall experience was. Before you and Alex met, were you a climber?
I started climbing, I think I learned about a year before I met him. I went once, and then I didn't start climbing consistently until like just probably 4 months, few months before I met him.
Okay. Yeah, cool. So, I mean, most of your climbing life has been with Alex then, who obviously is an elite
Yeah.
climber.
He
And
gets really mad at me because my sister took me climbing the first time. And then she sort of nurtured those early months. And so oftentimes people will be like, who taught you to climb? And I'll be like, my sister. And then they'll be like, what about the 10 years I put in after
right.
that? Like, no, it's really just my sister.
It's wild because, I mean, you're like a hell of a climber. And so like your progression through climbing from like just, yeah, maybe dabbling with your sister, but then obviously you like very quickly were thrown into a climbing lifestyle, whether you liked it or not. And it sounds like you did like it, which is good. But that your curve as a climber has been super fast. And we're not like, the intention of this conversation isn't to like just geek out over climbing, but it's a climbing show. So let's geek out over climbing for a little bit. But yeah, I'm curious, like, as you reflect on that, does anything stand out just in terms of kind of that early kind of beginner mindset? And as you were really progressing up through different skills and different grades, what do you feel were maybe the most impactful skills or things that happened or learning teachable moments that helped you to progress so quickly on your climbing journey?
There's a few distinct moments actually that I do think were big turning points for me. So one was that early on I was really focused on climbing harder because obviously that's just the most obvious goal in climbing is you slowly work your way up the grades. You go to the gym and you climb 5.7, and the next time you go back and you want to climb 5.8, and then you want to climb 5.9. And I had been pretty focused on climbing harder, but I got to this point where I actually had pretty strong fingers and I was getting better technique. But my fear was like it was like almost like my strength was going up, but my competence was kind of staying the same. And then I felt like I had these extremely varied experiences where maybe I would do really well on like a 5.11, and then we would go to a new crag and I'd get on like a 10A warm up and I would be like absolutely freaking out. And I just didn't have, it was kind of like I could perform hard when I needed to, but I couldn't rely on myself to perform consistently. And I couldn't rely on myself to perform consistently even on the easier grades. It felt like it was just really all over the map.
Yeah.
And so a few years in, I set this goal that I wanted to be competent, that I wanted to be able to go to any crag and confidently climb 510 instead of being able to send my one 512 project at my one crag near my house that I knew super well. And that was a huge turning point in my climbing because being confident on different styles of rock with different styles of climbing, having to overcome a lot of my fear, understanding, just getting comfortable with all these different aspects of climbing actually improved my overall ability to climb so much more. And I felt more confident saying I was a climber because I almost felt embarrassed before. I was like, yeah, well, maybe you see me on this day where I'm on this thing I know really well and I climb pretty hard. But you also might catch me on a day where I'm at a new crag, I'm on the warm up and I'm freaking out. And so I was just like, that's not a real climber. Like a real climber would, it just felt like it would be more consistent. And
Right.
I don't think there is a definition of what a real climber is. Like, I don't want to put those like limiting beliefs on anyone else, but at the time, those were the beliefs I held. But anyway, so working on competency and just stop focusing on difficulty for a while and focusing on that really changed my climbing a lot.
Oh, that's really
But
cool.
I also just climbed a lot. Like I didn't really train. I think there's so much, I mean, I'm sure everyone says this, but I think there's a lot of pressure on training. And I'm like, I think for so much of climbing, you can get away with just climbing to get better at climbing. And if you like climbing, that's great news.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, especially in tackling what you were talking about there, which is like competency across different types of rock or styles, slab, vert, overhung, to really the only way to do that is to do those things. So to be able to just get out and climb, I love that as a goal too, because A, it was probably a lot of fun, and B, you build out the toolkit in a way where now you can feel confident showing up wherever it's at and trying things. And so in order to do that, I'm just kind of practically speaking, did you just essentially set a goal to go out and climb a bunch of a certain grade or a bunch of different styles or different rock types? How did that kind of practically look, I guess, once you mentally made that distinction?
I mean, I was surrounded by a lot of pro climbers, and the pro climbing scene is mostly projecting, right?
Right.
It's working on one route at one area with dogged commitment, right? And so I think I was just very familiar with the projecting world. And it's not that I totally stopped projecting, but I think I just set the goal to climb at the crag, to be like, I'm going to try a different warm up each time. I'm going to, even if after I've given a burn on my project and I'm done projecting for the day, I'm going to go do like a cool down burn. And it wasn't like a perfect process. And I'm not like, I don't even know if this was many years ago. And I'm like, right now, do I feel like I'm a competent climber? Do I feel like I could climb 510 at any crag? I don't know. Probably not. I've never been to the Northeast. I feel like I'd be like, what is happening?
Right.
So, but yeah, I think largely I just started shifting towards just trying to lead more, not relying on anyone else in my climbing. That was another big part. Like building my competence was a lot about becoming self-reliant. So that meant that like I understood where the crag was. I had looked in the book. I knew where the routes were. I picked my own routes. I used Mountain Project or I used the book to find that route. I put my rope up. I worked on it if I needed to. I built a lot of just like rope skills, like on learning how to clip up and, things that are like in some ways associated actually maybe more with projecting, but just these skills to be like, okay, if I can't do this, do I think I could down climb? Could I clean the draws if I needed to? Like, what can I do all by myself? Right. And I think just slowly building up that self-reliance is really important. And actually I have this whole thing about, there's sort of like 3 types of relationships in climbing or in any outdoor endeavor. And you can be a mentor, you can be a mentee, or you can climb with someone who's of the same level as you or similar skill sets or similar level of experience. And I had spent so much time being the mentee that I'd sort of developed a little bit of a reliance on climbing with mentors.
Yeah.
And I think that while that like you said, like that helped me become a good climber quite quickly. But I had some kind of like pitfalls as well, where I wasn't as self-reliant as I wanted to be. And so part of my process of becoming more competent was going out with people who were less experienced than I was and learning how to teach, because you learn so much from passing on knowledge versus just receiving knowledge. And then also going out with people who were the same level of experience as I was, where we would kind of tackle things that were slightly out of our comfort zone and together be like, there's no one who's going to help us. Like, we have to figure this out. And so I think just making sure, or starting to build a community of climbing partners that covered all three of those bases versus just going out with people stronger than me, which was like a pool of climbers that I was very lucky to have a lot of access to. But yeah, broadening those partnerships.
This episode is supported by our friends over at Rungni. They've been such an incredible supporter of the Struggle Climbing Show for well more than a year now, and that's how I can make this show and pay the bills. And guess what? Now you can pay some bills with Rungni as well. I might be putting myself out of business here by sharing this, but they just launched this new community over on the Club app, and that link is right there in your show notes. And if you are a creative type, and if you want to earn some extra money on the side, you can hit that link, sign up, and become an ambassador for Rungni. You'll get your own discount code that you can use and share around your climbing crew. But then beyond that, there's all sorts of really cool climber-related challenges in this app, like filming yourself at the gym doing the boulder problem of the week with your friends, having a good time. And then when you share that, you get to earn points. You can earn money or you can earn free gear just for sharing this content out there and also just doing the thing that you love, which is climbing. So if this is something that interests you, check out Club. That link is right down there. And if it doesn't interest you, but you still want to score a discount on some awesome Rungni chalk and gear, well, then you can use code STRUGGLE for 15% off store-wide plus free shipping on a ton of bundles. And by using that code, it helps me to keep making the show, which is awesome. This episode is supported by PhysiVantage Nutrition, and I've been using PhysiVantage since long before there was ever even a podcast. I've been a paying customer for many years now. It tastes the best, and it does the best for me and supporting my goals in my training, my recovery, and my performance as a rock climber. I'm sure you all are familiar with their products. Their athlete team is crazy, from Alex Magos to Jonathan Siegrist, Amity Worm to Daniel Woods, and so many other crushers out there are using PhysiVantage regularly, and that's because it works. I use their supercharged collagen every day before I train my fingers or I go climbing. I use their vegan PowerPlex protein, which tastes incredible. The chocolate flavored protein that PhysiVantage makes is just crazy. That's like my sweet treat that I have at the end of every day. I'll either mix it up with some water or milk, or I'll mix a scoop in with my plain Greek yogurt, and it tastes like chocolate pudding. It is so good. And then recently, because I've been trying to build up that endurance for my long pumpy climbs out here at the Red, I've been using a lot of their Sendurex, which is like a beetroot extract. It's highly concentrated. It is science-backed to help support the endurance system, and I'm feeling like I'm climbing longer and harder and also recovering faster when I'm using PhysiVantage products. So I think you're going to love it too. If you haven't tried it, you can get 15% off your order over at PhysiVantage.com using code STRUGGLE15. If you're looking to level up your training, your recovery, and your performance, I have really felt the difference using this stuff for the past few years, and I think you will too. Check it all out at PhysiVantage.com and use code STRUGGLE15 to get that discount. I love that perspective. I appreciate you sharing that, because often I hear on this show through the conversations that I'm having, or if I'm talking with other coaches or climbers, hey, the best way to get better is to go climb with people who are better than you. And no doubt there's a lot of benefit in doing that. It can show you what can be done, or where, you can learn from the mistakes they made years ago. And I've experienced that myself, because by and large, the crew that I climb with are significantly more accomplished as climbers than me. But as you said, if that's exclusively it, you're kind of missing out on these other areas of development. And I don't know if you can recall a specific example or just in generalities, but what is that experience like as a climber? What can we learn? What can we further develop when we're climbing with people who aren't climbing as hard or as strong as we are?
Well, I think you get, when you go climbing with somebody who has a lot less experience than you develop a bigger appreciation for the full range of the process, because that person's not going to show up being like, oh, I know the crag and I know how to get there and I know what the routes are and I know how to climb them. I know what they're like. I know what the anchors are. I know how safe they are, right? Whatever. That person's probably going to be like, hey, where do you want to go? Like,
Right.
what should I bring? And so in that moment, you have to figure out all those things. And then you have to find the crag, and then you have to figure out which route is which. And then you have to figure out, I mean, you're going into it maybe totally blind, being like, I have to do this. And if I can't do this, they're not going to be able to step in and finish it for me, right? So I really need to know, I need to be confident in my ability or have tools to help me if I get stuck to get to the top of this route. And then you find yourself also teaching more, right? You find yourself guiding someone on, maybe like how to clean a route or, how to do a move. And I think those moments you actually realize not only do you benefit from the reiteration of it, but you realize how much you know and it can help you build some confidence. And I think confidence in the outdoors, not that we want to be overly confident and put ourselves in an unsafe situation, but largely being a little bit more confident in that space is going to help us realize how much more we're capable of than we think. And I think sometimes with climbing especially, we sort of undervalue what we don't really believe that we're as capable as we actually are. But my most valuable learning experiences have been when I went out with somebody who was about the same level as me, and we were tackling something that was slightly out of our comfort zone, like largely I learned to trad climb with a couple different people, but one of my dear friends stands out to me. And I remember we did this route in Yosemite. There's this area called the Five Open Books, and there's a couple way to get to the couple different routes or ways you can get to the top of the Five Open Books. But there's a second tier, and there's this very classic sort of like old school style route and that second tier that's called Selaginella. And I had heard about it for a long time, and I don't think it's a super hard grade, but it's known for being kind of like burly and physical. And have you climbed that or been there, Ryan?
No, not to the open books. I was out there this past season. I climbed something on the manure power. The first thing I've ever climbed in Yosemite. I've done a lot of like hiking and stuff. Yeah. Like I did my first climbing trip out there. So yes, tell me about this. And then I will decide if it's something that I want to put myself through or not.
Well, it was just it was one of probably the best days of my, one of my best climbing days in my whole life. But, we went into it being like, pretty sure we can do it, but we've never done it before. And it's just us two. Yeah. And there's this beautiful moment that can happen where everyone ended up stepping up exactly when the other person needs them to step up. So like we would look up and I'd be like, I think I can do this. And my friend was, okay, yeah, you take this one. And then we'd like look up at the next pitch and I'd be like, and she'd be like, I've got this. And it was this like incredibly symbiotic moment where we had each other's backs. We were very reliant on the other person, but we were also out there being self-reliant. And I get goosebumps thinking about it, but I remember getting to the top and being like, I can't believe we did that, and it was just up there and we didn't have any backup. We didn't have any plans. And probably so many people listening to this are like, yeah, that's how you learn how to climb. But for me, my climbing experience I just always ended up being with mentors and people who were better than me and knew more and could jump in if I needed them to. And it was just such a big part of my experience to shift to having more of these relationships with people I had to figure it out with.
Really like that. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, I'm psyched on that. It's such a cool distinction to be made. I feel like the value of not always having somebody there to show you the right way to do something or to swoop in and lead the pitch or to say, oh, I'll clean it if you can't send it, really to essentially, as the Vikings did, you burn the ships or whatever. Like you going out there and you're like, okay, we've decided to do this. Now we got to do this thing. And there's some of the most fun experiences come from epicking a little bit, right? And not always feeling like somebody's there to swoop in and save you or take care of you. And I think that provides a nice segue for kind of the bulk of what I wanted to explore with you here today, which is how we can create real experiences out in nature for those of us who are not professional climbers, who are maybe very busy students, parents, professionals, weekend warriors, and we maybe are interested in performance and do what we can at the gym and, want to stay healthy and strong, but really do want to try to find ways to create meaningful experiences out in nature. And maybe it's best to take a step back actually before we peel too specifically into some of those ideas or experiences and just learn a little bit about you outside of, what we just talked about, which is you as a climber and you as someone who's founded this organization Outwild, as well as you've been a life coach for many years, 7 or 8 years. And so maybe just tell us a little bit about like what your work is and what your passions are. And then let's, I think, explore some of these themes that we just touched on.
Yeah. So I work as a life coach. I've been a transition coach primarily for my entire coaching career, and I specialize in career coaching and communication coaching, but my lens is sort of what I call courageous and intentional living. This idea of being intentional, doing things on purpose, not just because they're easy or convenient or it's what everyone else is doing, and also being courageous, getting outside of our comfort zone and living life, pursuing its richness versus pursuing comfort. And so I do that with one-on-one clients, and I also do that through a company I helped co-found called Outwild. And Outwild is a community and a retreat series for folks who want to create more outdoor, value-driven lifestyles. So similar audience type, but I think there's a lot of us out there who I sort of think of them as two different audiences in a way, but people who either have always wanted to have the outdoors be a bigger part of their life, but it never really has been. Or people who maybe the outdoors were a very big part of their life at one point, and they've sort of lost sight of that because of whatever life reasons. So at these retreats, we do a combination of workshops on life design, things like what are your values and what are your habits and routines and what are your goals and how can you get into flow state more and what boundaries do you need to set to create time for this, like all these different life design workshops. And we pair that with outdoor activities that get people out of their comfort zones. So canyoneering, via ferratas, climbing, hiking. And we sort of find that there's like 3 factors that end up being a bit of the magic sauce. But one is getting away from the day-to-day. Like there is value in the retreat experience just by stepping out of our routine. I think it's great to do workshops from home and to do stuff from home, but we're still like at home. So we're still operating in kind of a certain way. And so taking a break from that. And then the getting outside of our comfort zone outdoors, I mean, not only does that create a lot of endorphins, but it also creates a lot of confidence. Like we kind of get to see this side of ourselves that we don't often get to see in day-to-day life. And it's this side of ourselves that doesn't know if they can do something and goes and tries. And at the end of it, it's like, wow, like I've learned something about myself and I have an ability I didn't even know about. And I think that confidence just infuses energy into the life design process. So you get this, you have this perspective from being out of your routine. You have this confidence and excitement and maybe a little bit of adrenaline from getting outside. And then you do the work, and you do the work with people who are also interested in creating lifestyles in this way. So, that's when you sit down and you actually look at your life and you think about like, what is working and what isn't working? And like, what do I really appreciate? And what do I want to change? And am I looking for micro changes or am I looking for macro changes? And then you turn to the person next to you and they're doing all of that same stuff and you get a bond over that and you feel connected and you feel supported. So it's these different elements kind of come together and it can be this pretty powerful vehicle for change.
So cool. Yeah, I'm like super into it. I love like retreats. I love the camp vibe. I don't know. You just...
We're all just looking for summer camp again.
Totally. We totally are. And like, why not have it? Because it's the frickin' best. So it's really cool that you're doing that, but you're bringing some practice, some format and some intentionality to that. It's not just like, hey, let's go have like an adult vacation, but hopefully let's leave this experience with some tools and some new goals or plans or whatever it may be to help us bring some of this magic home. And you said something as you teed up that part of your life there with regard to your focus on intentionality, doing things not because they're easy, but because they provide like a rich experience or a challenging experience. I don't want to misquote you there, but I'd love to explore that a little bit more because I think there's some rich territory there with regard to oftentimes we do seek comfort and we do seek an easy path or the easiest path. Sometimes just because we're frickin' exhausted and like that's just like life. But there's real magic to maybe not falling into that kind of default switch. And so I'd love to, A, understand that concept a little bit more, and then B, maybe there are some tools or some kind of tricks that you have found over the years or that you work with clients on that maybe those of us who are listening could explore as well, as we maybe want to try to be a little bit more intentional and bring a little bit more richness and experience into our lives this year, rather than just kind of go through the paces, if you will.
There's this quote that I think about all the time. I actually have not found a source for this quote. I don't know who said it first, but it's the insatiable momentum of the ordinary. And it's this idea that there's kind of like a hungriness to the ordinary side of life. There's this natural momentum to it. And that momentum, builds and builds in this insatiable way until one day we can't really remember what happened because it was all sort of the same. And I believe in the ordinary. I believe in creating ordinary lives that we love, like enjoying the day to day. I don't think that we can only have fulfilling, powerful experiences, doing wildly different things. Like, it's wonderful if you can create an ordinary that you love. But I also think that the ordinary is hard to remember. And I think memory is so much of our experience of life. Looking back, what we did with our day or our week or our month or our year, that's how we start to build a story of who we are. Mm-hmm. And so we're going to build that story of who we are and what our life was like based on our memories. And so creating experiences that we actually remember is a really important part of life. And peak outdoor moments, these experiences that take us out of the ordinary and out of our comfort zone, are often the easier ones to remember. And sometimes we only associate that with like bad things, right? I got an fender bender on the way to work, right? And it was uncomfortable and it's terrible, but I really remember it, right?
Right.
But what if we create really powerful and positive peak life moments that are out of the ordinary, out of our comfort zone? And so, I think I have a workshop I lead at Outwild that's called Big Outdoor Goals for Peak Life Moments. And I believe in that. I believe that it's really healthy and positive to make sure that at some point in every year, we do something a little bit bigger, something we really had to prioritize. Maybe we had to actually carve out space for it to go do something pretty far outside of our norm and pretty, and on that edge of our comfort zone. And that those moments are going to start to be what we remember and how we define ourselves by. And I want to add, and now I love all this stuff, that going on a tangent here, but I also want to add that adventure doesn't have to always be seen as this macro experience. I love the idea of a big outdoor goal, but for most of us, putting adventure in our lives is going to be much more of a micro experience. It's going to be something we can do within a couple hours of home, maybe ideally under an hour of home. And those experiences are just as positive. And actually, I had this crazy experience recently where I was at a clothing swap and a friend of mine was like, did you know that there are caves at this hiking trail area near where we all live? And I've spent so many hours on those trails and I think they didn't know about these caves, didn't know they existed, had never seen them. And I think part of having an adventurous spirit is following up on leads. When somebody mentions that trail or that route or that mountain or that thing, that's kind of cool that nobody really knows about. It's about saying, I'm just going to see if I can find any information in a 5-minute Google search. And I went and Googled it, found some sort of bare bone information and went out knowing that I might not find them, that if I did find them, I had no idea what to expect. Was this going to be a dumb hole in the wall or was this going to be something much bigger? And a friend and I went out. It's 7 minutes from my house, probably less than 7 minutes from my house. I cannot tell you how crazy it is how much time I've spent there.
No way.
And we found this insane cave. And it was multiple rooms, for our cave people out there, different, it wasn't just one big space. There was actually, you could go through tunnels and channels and find other rooms. And this was an under 2-hour adventure. Again, with total
cool.
door to door. This took probably less time than it would have taken me to go to a yoga class at my local yoga studio. But I'm going to remember that. I'm going to remember that as something I did this year. I'm going to remember that as something I did in my life. It was a very cool, fun, different experience. I didn't know if it was going to happen. I didn't know exactly how it was going to happen. I had those elements of the unknown that I think are super important for something to kind of qualify as an adventure. And in a lot of ways, it was a micro adventure. But
Yeah.
I think that whether it's small or whether it's big, creating these sort of points throughout our journey, these whatever little bubbles of experience that are just out of the norm, is it's a really important part of living this courageous, intentional life.
I just want to take a quick second here to talk about how I'm keeping track of all my training and climbing over the course of days, weeks, months, and years. And I'm using an actual physical analog journal, a paper journal that I'm holding in my hands right now, called the 5-Year Training and Performance Journal. I created this. I've been using something like this for the last 9 years, and it's a reflective journal, meaning I put something in for every single day, and at the end of the year, the next year starts back underneath that first one, so that as you go, you are able to see where you were at 1 year prior, 2 years prior, 3 years prior. You can log your goals at the beginning of every month and see what you checked off, and then the big breakthrough for me is that I'm able to reflect back and see what training interventions are actually working, what are worthwhile, and maybe which ones aren't. And I'm also able to see with a ton of gratitude and joy how much progress I've made. And I've never been able to get that from training apps. I like training apps. They help me to do my training, but this reflective journal has totally changed how I'm able to understand my personal training, my performance, and then everything that I do as a climber, like all my notable routes that I've sent, all my thoughts and dreams, they're all in here. And I get to look back and enjoy that day after day and year after year. And now you can too, because I made it and I'm selling it. And for $40, I think that's probably the cheapest thing you could buy that will last you 5 years as a climber. You can learn more over at thestruggleclimbingshow.com/journal. This episode is brought to you by Boulder Bear's caffeinated gummy bears. Oh my gosh, I love these things so much. Look, I like struggle as much as the next guy, maybe even a little bit more than the next guy, but I also like to have a lot of fun. And nothing says fun like crushing some gummy bears and then crushing your project. I've been using these for months now. They're friggin' awesome. I love that I can perfectly dial in the energy boost that I need. So like each of these little caffeinated gummy bears that are totally delicious, by the way, have 20 milligrams of caffeine in them and 22 milligrams of collagen. So I can dial in the boost that I want. Like if I want to rip some holds off of the TB2 or the boulder sets at my gym, I'll take like 4 or 5 of them and it's like, boom, having a Red Bull, but without all that liquid sloshing around in my stomach. Or if I just want a little bit of a boost, I'll just take like 1 or 2 or like 1 an hour if it's going to be a long day at the crag, and that just keeps me going great. Swing over to thestruggleclimbingshow.com/boulderbears to try them out. And if you use code STRUGGLE at checkout, you're going to score yourself 15% off plus a free refillable travel pack. It's cheaper than a Red Bull and way, way better for us climbers. Hit that link in your notes to check it all out. Is there a ratio or an equation? God, I mean, just like, you can see how freaking like type A I am. I'm like, oh, all these beautiful experiences. And I'm like, what's the ratio? But I don't know. This is just like how my brain works. So, because I want to take it from the theoretical or from this beautiful concept, the conceptual of creating experiences, unique, out of the ordinary experiences, be them big, grand things, like you said, where you need to plan it, carve out some time, maybe invest some money, whatever it is. It's a trip, it's an expedition, versus the backyard. Hey, I've got a few hours. Let me just like go walk out into the woods and see what's out there. I understand the value of both. And also just from a practicality perspective, it's easier to incorporate both because you can't always have grand adventures. But is there, just in your experience, kind of a secret sauce to how many grand adventures in an ideal scenario, and this is all like coming from a place of schedule and finances and privilege and all the things that go into being able to live a life of outdoor adventure. But, you know, what's a good target for like grand adventures in a calendar year versus kind of local backyard, surprising, find the caves down the road adventures in the time of year? And then I'd like to think about like, okay, then how do we actually try to make some of that stuff happen?
Yeah. When it comes to timing, unsurprisingly, I don't think there is a right amount of time. I think that if we can go on one bigger adventure a year, that's pretty great. Like for so many of us, carving out one big adventure a year is almost unattainable. But I think I think that's probably a good attainable bar for many of us. If you did more, would that be great? Probably. But if you can get one in a year, like, is that a great start? Are you going to have one thing a year that you can kind of look back on and be like, oh, I did that thing and that was so cool? Yes. And also, I want to add that some of these adventures require a lot of there's so many different ways to do it. But if your adventure that you've chosen is something that requires a lot of like training or preparation, the upside to that is that you're probably going to have a lot of micro adventures in the process of training for your macro adventure.
Yeah.
The downside to that is that maybe there's so much training or preparation needed that it doesn't happen. So you have to figure out what's the right type of adventure for you, but not all adventures have to require training. And I think that's like a big barrier for some people, is being like, well, I'm like, okay, it has to be something that I would have to work towards for like weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks. So I'm not going to plan it until like next year. And I always say like a task will, actually, I think this is a saying, but a task will stretch to fill as much time as you give it. So,
Right.
but typically we can fit in so much more to a small amount of time than we think. So anyway, pick an adventure that requires an amount of preparation that you feel capable to give. And then don't give yourself too much time, in the sense that you're more likely to, it's like giving yourself more time to change your mind and not do it.
So when you're doing this, the workshop that you lead, I've forgotten the exact name of it, but essentially like how to intentionally plan a big adventure out in nature.
Mm-hmm.
How do you recommend, like, for the attendees of this workshop, that they actually break down that process? Or, because like, let's say I don't have an adventure in mind. I'm just like, I want to do something because I know it's going to be rad to go out and do something. How do I start down this journey of actually then putting in the pieces so that at some point in time, there's a date circled on the calendar and I'm going to go do this thing?
Well, so in this workshop, I actually use a very hilarious method for picking your adventure. Ryan, are you familiar with MASH?
Like the little paper.
No, but you're thinking in the right era of like ridiculous childhood games.
Right.
I can't remember what this one is called. But that's one.
We called it a cootie catcher, where like you would do this and then like you would lift up a flap and you'd be like, I'm going to drive a red car or whatever.
I think that would actually be a great way to pick an outdoor adventure as well. MASH stands for, in my childhood upbringing, mansion, apartment, shack, house. And you and a friend would sit down and you would write down mansion, apartment, shack, house. And then you would write down like veterinarian, miner, lawyer, whatever, some random jobs. And each list had to kind of have like one terrifyingly bad option and one like terrifyingly good option. And then you would write down like people in your class that you had a crush on, like Sally, John, whoever, right? And then you would close your eyes and you would move your pen up and down and someone would say, stop. And then you would like circle whatever your pen was on. You'd be like, okay, I'm going to live in a shack. And then you do it for the next category. You're like, okay, I'm going to be a veterinarian who lives in a shack. And anyway, you keep going and you like build this potential future life. So I play this game with my participants and I make them write down like 5 places that they've always wanted to go, 5 outdoor activities that they've always wanted to do, and 5 people that they want to go on a trip with. And they can put them, solo travel can be on that list. And then we play MASH. And they'll be like, I'm going to go canyoneering in like the Yosemite with my mom, right? Or whatever it is. And sometimes it doesn't quite work. They're like, I'm going to go scuba diving in Wisconsin with like my child. You're like, well, okay. But the point is that it's not worthwhile to get too focused on, like, we don't want to get trapped in analysis paralysis. And it's not worthwhile to get so focused on picking the right goal. And this sort of sounds contradictory to what I just said, which is like, you kind of need to pick something that's like the right thing for you, right? The only factors that really matter are like, are you excited about it? And can it happen in the amount of time that you have? And as long as those the 2 things are true, there is no right adventure. Like the version of you that goes backpacking in Sequoia doesn't like become enlightened faster than the version of you that goes snorkeling in Mexico or whatever. There's no right adventure. And the more time we spend trying to come up with some sort of perfect goal, the more time we're wasting and the less likely you are to actually choose something. So if you like it, you're excited about it, it goes somewhat outside your comfort zone, there's some element of the unknown, and you can do it in the amount of time that you have, great. And so like, if you need help deciding, I'm always like, okay, well, is there someone like, find easy ways to decide. You'd be like, well, this one had the cheapest flight, so I chose that one. Or this one was, my friend did it last year and they had all the beta, so it was kind of just easy to do it, right? Like it can be arbitrary, just whatever feels kind of like following the path of least resistance, because that path will probably make sure it actually happens.
I love this just exercise of playing MASH too, because if nothing else, it forces you to actually get something down on paper. And, it's like 5 trips that I'd like to take, and some are more rad than others, but like at least I'm now starting the process. Ooh, that's fun. I like that. Okay, so great. So then I play that game, I pick the thing, and then essentially it's just a matter of actually doing it. And are there any practical tips that you coach people on the side? So like I've picked the thing and I've scheduled it for September. Is there anything that between, now in September that makes that process more fulfilling or rewarding or exciting or ultimately leads to a more fulfilling adventure once we've identified it?
Well, in terms of making it happen, I always say your biggest asset is accountability. In fact, I used to have this joke that I said, which was, I've never set a goal. I've just talked about things so much that it would be deeply embarrassing if I didn't do it. And I actually fully stand by that strategy. If you tell everyone you know that you're going to go on a climbing trip to the New, or you're going to climb Mount Whitney, or you're going to go backpacking in the Rubies, it's going to be pretty hard to cancel the trip. You're going to be like, every single person I know has been asking me about this. They're going to, on Monday when I go back to work, they're going to be like, how was it? So I think accountability is a great way to just use the power of our social nature for good. Use that social pressure as a vehicle to make things happen.
I've announced all of my climbing goals on this podcast, and it's basically resulted in that. I'm like, okay, now I have to do it because it's going to be too embarrassing to get on the show and be like, well,
I didn't do it again.
Guys, yeah, exactly. I give up. So yeah, there is a benefit to that that I've experienced as well. You kind of put it out there. You spray about it. You spray about this future trip to Zion or to rafting the Green River or whatever it might be. And at some point in time, you better do that dang trip because people are counting on it.
Yeah, I think it's actually a really powerful tool. And also, we learn so much from talking to other people. The more, when I coach people around changing careers, one of the first things I ask them to do is just start having conversations. And actually conversations, not where they're talking, but where they're getting someone else to talk, where they're getting someone else to talk about what they do and how they feel about it and what their schedule is and what their lifestyle is like and what's going on in their industry and what's the most exciting sort of career option that they know about. And, you just start talking. And every person that you talk to, not only is going to probably impart some amount of information that you might use, but they also want us to become a minion out there that's going to have you in mind if they hear about an opportunity. And I think it's kind of the same with outdoor adventures, where every person you talk to becomes somebody who they might know something about that place or have done something like that before, or know somebody who might want to go with you if you're looking for a partner or whatever it is. And so it's not just that they might hold you accountable, but it's also just that collective social knowledge and participating in that sort of karmic cycle of giving and receiving to your outdoor community.
Cool. Ooh, I'm so hyped. I'm going to go through this exercise this weekend with my family. We're going to find...
You're all going to play MASH.
Yeah, we're going to play MASH.
Right after you figure out if you're going to live in an apartment or a shack, you're going to figure out what your outdoor goal is.
Yes. Well, and so then now to contrast the big thing, and I think a big thing a year seems totally achievable for many people who are likely listening to this podcast right now. And it doesn't have to be a super expensive thing. It just has to be a thing that, to your
Yeah,
point, gets you out of
absolutely.
your comfort zone. It kind of breaks the habit and that you're excited about. And those can be any number of things. Even more accessible are these day trips or afternoon trips, these little kind of backyard adventures or the micro adventures, as you're saying. And have you found in your experience or with those that you work with what a reasonable goal could be in terms of frequency of those?
I mean, that starts to depend a lot on your lifestyle and your responsibilities and your privilege and your budget. But I think ideally the benefit of these sort of more micro local adventures is that they're way more affordable because there's no travel involved. And I also caveat, you can have macro adventures that are close to home or only getting in a car. It doesn't have to be like a crazy place far away, but it just maybe is like a longer thing or a bigger thing or a more challenging thing. It's just big in some way. But for these more micro local adventures, the number of times is less important than just the consistency. That it's like it's part of your everyday life and you feel like it's part of you. Like in my value set, like adventure is one of my biggest values. And it just means that I'm regularly doing things that have some sort of unknown component. And I keep my personal definition of adventure very broad so that it feels really achievable. But the point is that it's regular. It has to feel right. So maybe for some of us, that's once a week. Maybe for some of us, that's twice a week. Maybe for some of us, that's once a month. But it needs to be consistent enough that it feels like it's kind of part of your identity, it's part of your schedule, it's part of your psyche. And I think there's often so much more close to us than we think. We get so used to being like, I don't know, these are the trails. And almost always, like there's some other thing that we haven't explored, but for some reason we've like written it off, like
Right.
those trails are muddy, or like those trails are harder to walk on, or those trails like, you have to get a permit for the parking. So I like never go there, right? There's something near us that we've kind of just like written off for some sort of like not very good reason. And maybe it's just making that choice to be like, you know what, I'm going to go do the thing I haven't really done. Or even if you have like I saw this it was like this woman talking about living with some sort of like psychological condition. But anyway, the video was her being like, I walk this trail with my dog every day. And there's this like spur, but it's kind of ambiguous. Like it definitely says that you can walk there, but it's right next to a sign that like also says private property or something. And she's like, I've seen other people walk on that trail. Like I know that it's fine. But some part of me is like, but it feels like I have to take that extra mental step to decide to do it. And so I've never done it. And she was like, today I'm going to go walk on this trail that I've never walked on before, that has always felt slightly confusing. And I loved that, because it's like she was having an adventure, and she was having an adventure on her normal dog walking trail. But it was just taking that one side road or that one path that, had some sort of unknown component she hadn't done before. Like this is something that my husband, Alex, is like very good at. Like he's always like, I'm going to warm up on a new route. I'm going to take the trail that's slightly different. I'm going to try every single way to get somewhere to see what the best way is. I'm never just going to get super stuck in one routine or one path or one way of doing things. And I think that's a value that I've started to kind of hold for myself too.
Really cool. I appreciate that. Yeah, that's something that we can do. I often think about that just even out here at the Red, because I typically go to like take the easiest trail to the crag, and then I'm there and I never really explore beyond where I'm at. But oftentimes what opens my eyes to that, or what kind of forces me in a way to do that, is when I bring my kids out climbing with me. Because if it's just like me and the crew are like, okay, let's just go, we'll get on the projects, we'll make the most of our time out here, we'll get as many routes in, and then we'll get home. But then with the kids, you climb once and then they're bored, or they have to go to the bathroom and you need to find some privacy. So you walk around the corner that you've never been around, and all of a sudden there's like a little cave or a waterfall or something. And so, yeah, just kind of essentially, I'm like a person of routine. I really do like routine, but when I'm forced out of it, and usually by my kids, then there is like a little mini adventure that can happen. It's harder for me to just kind of force myself to do that when it's just me, if that makes sense.
The cool thing about kids is like, the level, like the bar for something to be considered an adventure is like even lower. Like it's even more attainable because they're like, oh my
Right.
gosh, we like went like under a rock that I normally walk past. It was this crazy adventure. And you're like, I mean, yeah, for me, that's just a rock that's like on the trail where I walk. But for
Right.
your kid, it's like going under it was this like very important thing and they remember it and then they want to go back to it and they talk about it. And so I think it just drops that bar for what an adventure is even lower. And you kind of like suddenly everything feels like an adventure. And there's like something great about that because like I said, like anything can, anything in that adventure space, however we decide to define adventure, is going to be something we probably remember. And our kids just allow those adventures to be so much more accessible. And suddenly we have this memory of doing this little thing with them, but something that felt so big in the moment because it was new to them.
I really do like that. And I'm the type of person who tries to want to make everything to be like the top experience. And I often let, I think, perfect be the enemy of good when it comes to planning a little camping trip or a hiking day or like, I'm just like, oh, well, let me just research a little bit more where the best camping site's going to be. And then ultimately we lose our weather window and then we never went camping. And so it's a good reminder for me as well to just, get out there because oftentimes the spontaneity leads to things that over planning, even if you think it's going to be the best, opportunity to go do a certain thing that's been on your list. And if it never happens, then you kind of missed it. You missed that window. So it is nice to just say yes. I think just get out there.
Yeah. I mean, I think you bring up a great point, which is that you need a little bit of space for an adventure to happen. Like, it's play. I think play is one of these things that is very hard to plan for because by nature it doesn't really have a goal. It's often spontaneous. It's not driven by anything in particular. But we need space, like I always talk about play triggers. And like one of my play triggers is like being on the floor. That if I physically am like lying on the floor, I like lose the shackles of like normal societal expected behavior or acceptable behavior. And I start to just like play physically, but mentally as well. And, but that's not something I can like plan. I'm not like, I'm going to get on the floor and play. That just doesn't work at all. And I think adventure is kind of similar. It has to have some amount of space where you're willing to kind of just like let the experience unfold versus trying to control the experience. Because by nature, the second you try to control it, it sort of stops being an adventure a little bit.
So good. I'm going to be trying to bring a lot of this into my life this year. These are like all the things that I want. Well, I did that workshop with you at the end of last year. And like one of the things that I think I shared was I just want to take my kids camping. And I just have like overplanned and overthought about like the gear and the comfort and all that. And it's just, I'm just going to like circle a weekend and we're just going to go camping. And if it's raining, we're going to go camping when it's raining. And if it's like, quote unquote beautiful, we're going to do that. And if I don't have the air mattress or whatever, then we'll sleep on the ground. Like I'm just going to do it. I'm going to leap. I will report back. My homework is to report back. I'm taking my kids camping.
Love. Just told everyone on the podcast you're going to do something, so now you have to go do it.
That's
It'd be
right.
too embarrassing if you didn't, Ryan.
I've put it out there. Okay, good.
I'm really here to hype the power of shame.
Really good.
Actually, in an unexpected turn of events, I want to harness the power of shame and embarrassment in order to fuel your journeys.
That'll be the pull quote that I do for all the marketing of this episode.
I'm going to get a really bad reputation in the coaching world.
No, it works. It gets results, I promise. Well, one of the other things I want to talk about here to shift is to focus on communication, because you said that that's been an area of focus for you with your coaching and the work that you do with Outwild, as well as with your various clients. And communication is so critical as climbers, so we can, look at it a bit through the lens of climbing, but it's also just like we're humans and we're in relationships with friends and relationships and also romantic relationships and familial relationships. And communication is really kind of like the secret structure that holds all of that together. And so I don't know anything about communication aside from, just I guess what I've kind of stumbled into. I've never studied it. And so how would you like to explore that topic here?
I have so many different communication strategies, but the most basic and the most simple one that I come back to the most is what I call HTK. HTK communication, which is just an acronym that stands for honest, timely, and kind. So honest means like you're saying how you actually feel. Like you're actually just being honest about what it is that you want or feel or need or are afraid of. You're being yourself. Timely is not saying something in like super quick when we're kind of still reacting, but not waiting so long that we've then become resentful. And this part can be really tricky. It's like finding that sweet spot when you're like, I feel calm, I can present this in a calm way. And it hasn't been 6 months of me being slowly driven mad. And that's on us, right? Like we have to decide to say something before we've become resentful. And that resentment is often like, that's kind of on us. Like if we've chosen to wait and allow something to continue just because we're like hoping that the other person's going to read our mind or interpret our passive aggressive behavior, that's on us. So the effective communication has to be timely. I also have like a whole other joke about timely communication, which is that like there's like a good time to talk to someone and a bad time. And like I used to always try and talk to my husband like at night right before he fell asleep. I was like, actually as a communication coach, that's just a bad time. Like they're just not actually, literally they may be unconscious. And so like make sure your partner's conscious before you talk to them.
I think there's something universal about wives when it comes to this, Sanni. I have to tell you, literally, Kara and I both work from home. We got all day where we can talk. And it's like when we're brushing our teeth, she's dropping like the heaviest stuff. And I'm like, whoa, I'm minutes from the pillow and like you're like uncorking existential crises right now, and she's like, it's just the way my brain works. And I'm like, I cannot pay attention right now. Oh, it's
but
so
at least
funny.
You're conscious, Ryan. At least you're conscious. At least
right.
you are still brushing your teeth, whereas Alex, who was I think actually just asleep, but I was just talking to the body,
That's that, but that way you get to like say your piece, you get to speak your mind, there's no pushback. This actually, that might work best.
We always agree. He just silently agrees with me. I don't,
That's
it's great.
That's so funny. So you're right. So timely in that sense is also important. And I think about that with my kids as well. Like when I want to talk to them about, less screen time. Well, I want to do it at a time where they're going to be receptive, where they might be more calm and amenable to making changes to the routine and all that. But that's hard too, because sometimes it's like something hits me. I'm like, I want to talk about this right now. So there is some discipline that comes from knowing when would be the best time to bring something up. If we're talking about climbing relationships, to your point, you don't want to resent your climbing partner or friend for a long time, but you also don't want to bring it up at a time where they might be defensive or you're feeling too kind of reactive or emotional. So there's some nuance there. It sounds like in order to hit the T. The H, I guess, makes sense. Let's be honest. Let's try to communicate honestly. The T may be a little bit more tricky to figure out.
Yeah, I'm thinking like your partner's like literally on the crux move and you're like, you've been short roping me lately. They're like, no. You're like, yeah, like there's a bad time and a good time. Find it. Yeah. So then the K is kind. And this one's probably the hardest, maybe in some ways, in terms of actually really figuring out how we want to say something. I have this thing I tell my clients, which is like, if you want to be right, proceed. If you want to communicate, leave your righteousness at the door. And it's this idea that, under the umbrella of effective communication, if our goal going into the conversation is to be right, we've almost eliminated actually the chance to be effective. Like effective communication is each party being heard and each party understanding the other. Going in with the goal to be right almost always actually eliminates that potential. But if we go in with the desire to communicate, then a lot shifts. And so the kindness, the K part of HDK, kind, it's about using I statements. It's about only ever talking about our personal experience, only ever talking about what we actually truly know. It's about not attacking someone. It's about, it's not saying, hey, you short rope me all the time. It might be, hey, I'm noticing that sometimes when I'm climbing, it feels hard to pull up the rope. And like, I'm always trying to become a better belayer. I'm just curious if we could work on this together. Right. But it's that gentleness And it's about making it about us and our experience and never pointing fingers. Almost any statement that starts with you is about to go somewhere that's going to make them defensive.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, so I think HTK is just a really simple way to kind of remind us how to effectively communicate. But, that's just one of many strategies.
I like that a lot. Thank you for sharing that. That's certainly something that I struggle with sometimes, the kind of wanting to be right. I really like to be right. And so it's to try to leave that behind and go in with the intention to communicate. I really like the way you phrased that. Really cool. Let me bring up a case study if I can, or just like kind of a real world climbing example and see how you might recommend climbers who might be experiencing this navigate
I
it.
love this. I love case studies. Go ahead.
Okay, good. Competitiveness amongst friend groups of climbers. And kind of this, I think, I've experienced this. I think a lot of people who are listening probably do. And I don't know if it's like I put it on myself or it's just kind of like this under thing. But like if you're just like at the gym and you're climbing and there's this, maybe not spoken, but just like you can kind of feel like, I want to climb this before the other person, or they climbed that, and so I should be able to climb that, or out of the crag, if you're projecting something at the same time and there's nerves around like, oh, if they send it first, then I'm going to be the one that has to try to send it so that we can move on to a different thing. And yeah, it's not like a super specific example. It's just like, it's something that I've felt and experienced as a climber.
I think this is such a good example because probably everyone's experienced some version of that. Like sometimes we call it vibyness in my household. Like
the vibyness.
Like, kind of getting vibed out right now. Like, it feels like we're all kind of coming in with our own objectives and thoughts and opinions, and we kind of want to like show the other person that we know more or can do better. Another word I come across a lot that I think can be weird in the climbing world is posturing, right? Where you're actually just not acting normally. You're acting with the goal to prove what you know.
Yeah.
To kind of land your place in the hierarchy of the crag as like the most experienced or close to the most experienced. And I think that energy is super toxic, especially posturing. Competitiveness can go a lot of different directions. Like you said, it can be really healthy, it can be fun, and it can also be kind of vibey, where it's kind of like, are we here for the right reasons? Are we enjoying this? Is this fun, or is this just sort of like a trying to kick the other person off the pole?
Totally.
And I think that I have a couple different suggestions and ideas, and I think a lot of things are about trial and error. But one of the fastest ways to sort of easily dispel either sort of that posturing energy or any of those energies actually is just with humor. And I always say like stop, drop, and acknowledge. Like, so it's about calling it out, but calling it out not in a rude way, calling it out in a playful way. Just like, oh, we're all just standing around trying to like get to the top before the other person, or oh, so-and-so is like, they're about to send it, and that's just going to put my ego in hyperdrive, right? Like whatever way you have to, like, if it's self-deprecate, like calling out your own, like, and again, actually in the spirit of HTK, of that K meaning kind, it's probably, teasing is a dangerous thing. Like, it's probably not about attacking the other person subtly. It's about making fun of ourselves and noticing our own reaction. Like, oh my God, wow, I can just feel my competitiveness going out of control right now. Just calling it out, naming it, making it feel funny can often instantly dispel it. Everyone's just sort of laughs and they're like, oh yeah, wait, we're here to have fun. Like everyone's got these crazy hormone-driven reactions going on, and actually, like, that's not why we're here. So I think humor is a really good tool, using it kindly, making it about us, and just calling out that, like, that weirdness, or going up to kind of be like, whoa, it feels kind of weird here. Everyone's got something to prove. And actually like that example, I'm like, that might actually trigger some defensiveness, right? Because I said it's kind of like making it about everyone else.
Right.
But finding that way to do it and, just without calling someone out, but more just like calling ourselves out in our own reactions. With kind of that vibiness at the crag thing, I think the best way is like actually this is one of my favorite and least favorite climbing moments, which is that somebody is like at a boulder or on a route or at a crag, and like another group walks up. And it's like in those initial moments, you're like sussing out the other group, like,
Right.
oh, are they crashing our good time? Or like, oh, well, we were here first, or well, we know the crag better, or we're locals and you're not, whatever the thing is. And I will often notice myself having that reaction of like, oh, other people are coming up. Like, are they going to try and like get on my boulder or whatever? And I have to consciously be like, wait, that's not fun anymore. The second I had that thought, I stopped having fun. I'm actually just going to introduce myself. I'm just going to actually literally just say, hi, I'm Sanni. Like, how are y'all doing today? And it's just like taking the time to break the ice instead of everyone just sort of sidestepping around each other can make such a huge difference. And this is how we make crags welcoming spaces. Like, this is how we make crags not just the same 10 people, but lots of different people with lots of different backgrounds coming from lots of different places and lots of different styles. And it's just that we actually just take the time to say hi. And
I
we
love it.
make that space feel comfortable. Like, where are you coming from? Are you local? Like, have y'all been here before? And I think this is something that it's starting to feel like once you notice this, it's almost like impossible to unsee, which is like the initial moments of a dynamic between two parties at a crag. And you
Oh
have
my
to,
God. It's so funny. Like this, like literally just happened to me a couple days ago when I was at the crag. Cause I'm so used to climbing at an empty crag. Cause although I'm like a weekend warrior by lifestyle, I'm actually a weekday warrior because the weekends are typically spent with the family. And so oftentimes I can carve out like a random Wednesday and go climbing. So I'm not accustomed to seeing a lot of people out at the crag. And like sometimes I can feel that weird, like faux entitlement come up, like I'm at a thing and then like, another party comes up and I'm like, well, hope they're not thinking about the getting on this route or whatever, as if it's my fucking route. It's like so ridiculous. But I love your tip there, which is just to because that's probably like a normal reaction. We're just like, we're like in our little communities and, oh, strangers are walking up. Like, are they going to be cool or not? But just to recognize that and be like, oh, the second I started feeling that way, I actually wasn't having fun because it's like a negative thought, a negative reaction, a negative feeling. And how can I just like get back to having fun? Well, let's say hi. Let's be cool.
Yeah.
Let's strike up a conversation and maybe they're, have some great stories or, they can help us with this thing that we're doing or we know them because they're mutual friends or whatever it is.
Right.
Like being open to that makes so much sense. But I feel that like what you just said there. And there is something, whether it's at the gym, if it's crowded or a crag that's crowded, there is that conflict that can come from just wanting to make sure we get our time on our project or we have the fun time with our friends that we're intending to have out there. And it kind of creates like a little bit of an exclusionary moment. And it's nice to hear that you've had success addressing it by just like kind of forcing yourself to be open with like the people who are coming up. And then, I'm sure more times than not, it's like totally fine and they're not jerks.
100%. And I've also had the experience of like recently I walked up to a boulder. There were a bunch of people there. And I said hi, and no one responded. And I was like, all right, okay. But then I was like, I'm not going to get vibed out. I'm not going to like not climb today. I'm not going to go to a totally different boulder because someone's having an attitude, someone's having a moment. I was like, I've been there before. I've been accidentally vibey. I'm like, I get it. You had a reaction to me walking up. I came with a couple different people. Feels like a lot. So I actually tried to overcompensate by being like psycho nice, where I'm like, oh my gosh, I love your climbing clothes, whatever. Like, I love your like, oh wow, you looked great on that move. Like, what are y'all like? How did you figure out that beta? Or whatever, just like being psycho nice because people just can't like you just can't uphold. Like the second someone compliments you, you're not going to be like, keep being a dick.
Right.
So I think that just awareness of these dynamics, noticing when we're having fun, notice the second that we stop having fun, it's because we're participating in something and we're participating in a dynamic. And we can always break the ice on that dynamic by either just like radically shifting or just like acknowledging it in like a funny way. And I think with competitiveness, we can't stop other people from being competitive. I mean, unless you were like, I actually really want to have a heart to heart with somebody particular in my life, and I actually want to have like an HTK conversation with them where I go to them and I'm like, hey, like, I love you so much. I really want our climbing partnership to last. This is something I've been noticing. We kind of get competitive with each other, and sometimes it feels like we don't actually enjoy it. Would you be open to like talking about that? You could do that.
Yeah.
But if you didn't want to do that, the quickest way is to notice what your own feelings are and to remove yourself from the competition by just doing whatever it is you want to do. If you want to climb the route again because you want to climb the route again and that sounds fun, great. Go climb the route again. But if you're like, I don't really care about this and I don't care that they just sent it and this route doesn't look that fun to me, I want to do this one over here, go do that. But just like tap back into your own desire, because that's almost like the antidote to the competitiveness, where we're just like, I'm only ever in a competition with myself and I'm only here to light my own heart up. So if I just tune into what my heart wants, I kind of like just remove myself from whatever that competition was. And I think that can be a really helpful strategy, because the other person is feeding off of our body language. And if we can remove ourselves, then they'll kind of quickly realize that there's no subtle indications that a competition is afoot, and they'll usually stop doing it too.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. I love it. I love the use of humor, self-deprecation, honesty. It's all really good stuff. It should not only kind of dispel any sort of vibyness. I love the term vibyness. Dispel the vibiness, but also just, make for just a more fun experience in the moment and just better climbing relationships as a whole.
It's participating in like a climbing culture that's more welcoming. Like, it makes me sad when people have an experience of climbing that is unwelcoming. That makes me really sad. I feel like I participate in that culture, and if I want it to feel welcoming, then I have to be welcoming. And that's the only role that I can play, like, besides putting PSAs out there that are like, be welcoming at the crag. I think it's really just how we show up. That's like the thing we have control over. And not to say that I'm perfect at this. Like, definitely sometimes I'm like, retreat, don't say hi. But trying and trying again and again and again.
Yeah, well, you really are. I mean, you do walk the walk. It's you're so welcoming every time I'm out that way, and I appreciate that.
Next time I'm totally going to vibe you out when you come over.
It's fine. Alex vibes me out on the freaking ping pong table every time. So but I'm practicing. I'm going to come back stronger than ever on that pong table one of these days. I'm going to vibe him out. He's going to
Yeah, I mean, that's the other direction to go. Lean in. You out vibe them. You out competitiveness them. Love that.
That's it. Shame and embarrassment work to set adventure goals, and out vibing people works to address bad vibes.
You heard it here first, folks.
So on that, if people want to work with you, do you take clients? Tell us about like how you work with people and also what Outwild's got going on this year.
So I do work with one-on-one clients. I'm mostly waitlist based right now, but people can always reach out and get on my waitlist. It is actually getting shorter now that I'm no longer birthing children. Maternity leave really things got a little bit slow there for a bit, but now back in action. So people can reach out to me at my email. And then Outwild has 2 events this year. They're actually sold out as of right now, but sometimes we put tickets up if someone has to cancel for any reason. So you can kind of keep an eye out, and then keep an eye out for online events, which we do kind of sporadically throughout the year. You can join our newsletter, keep an eye out for our 2026 event lineup, which will probably get posted sometime in the fall. And just participating in the community can just mean, a lot of people just come to our online events first before they go to an in-person event. There might actually be 1 ticket left now that I say this for our event in Tahoe in May. So if you're listening, that ticket might still be there. I don't know.
Yeah, cool. Well, they can check the Outwild site for that, and I'll link to all this stuff in the show notes. And so for 2026, just so people understand kind of like Outwild, like you essentially do a couple like big retreat. Usually they're like in some super badass location where there's like a variety of outdoor activities that can happen. And it includes like lodging and food and programming and all of that? Like what is it like to attend an Outwild event?
All of the above, yes. We have one retreat that we hold every year that is recurring, and that's a women's retreat right outside Zion National Park.
Cool.
And it's a smaller group. It's about 20 participants. We all stay at this really cool cabin just outside the park in Orderville, Utah. And there's actually a via ferrata in the backyard. So the way Outwild works is that it's like we provide a schedule and we all go do things together largely. So we'll do workshops together, and then we'll do yoga in the morning together, and then we'll do workshops together. All the food is provided, the accommodations, and then we'll all go adventure together in the afternoon, and then we'll kind of come back, we'll debrief, have food, play, do a parachute under the stars, and then go to bed. And we do that for about 3 days.
Yes.
And I always encourage people, like if you're taking the time, do the 3-day retreat and then plan something afterwards for yourself if you're already in a cool area like Zion. And then usually our other retreats change through like year after year. We'll either go back to a venue we haven't been to in a while or go to a new venue. So like the women's retreat is a bit smaller, but we try to hold a flagship event every year that's closer to like 40 to 80 people, depending on our venue. It's usually a little bit more affordable than the smaller retreats because it's more people. It's often like more like camp vibes, like cabins or whatever.
It's very cool. Congratulations on what you and the co-founders have built on that. And so for those who are making up their MASH lists for 2026, you can add Outwild to it, and maybe the pencil will land on that, and you can reach out to Sanni for more information. This has just been awesome, Sanni. I really appreciate it. It was like so refreshing for me to, I don't know, take a step back and like kind of a deep breath as I tend to be very focused and driven on performance and climbing, and I get so much pleasure from that. But just to be a part of this community and to figure out how to communicate and operate better within it, and also set some really fun adventure goals that have maybe nothing to do with performance climbing, all of that really excites me. And so thank you for indulging me in that little conversation and tangent here today.
Oh, it was so fun for me. Thank you for having me and asking questions and being curious. And yeah, it's always lovely to see you, Ryan.
All right, that wraps things up here with our friend Sanni Honnold. I hope that was as joyful for you as it was for me. She's just such a delightful human being, and I got so much out of this. I teased at the beginning of this how I implemented some of Sanni's ideas here to plan a family vacation and a little adventure here in 2 hours. And so I'll just tell you a little bit about that right now. You know that game of MASH that she was talking about where you like scroll the pencil up and down? I got with the family. We wrote down a bunch of things that we might want to do, and we scrolled the pencil up and down, and it landed on Yellowstone. And Yellowstone's a park that I've never been to myself in my whole life, and it's also something that my son in particular has been really psyched on because he's been super into volcanoes, and that's like the super volcano. And so, okay, we landed on the thing. Well, now how do we plan it? And I'm like a little bit type A when it comes to planning things, and I really want everything to be perfect, and I want to make sure we're getting enough adventure and enough comfort and all this. And it was like kind of crippling at first. Like we had decided on the thing and I just didn't know how to plan it. And then one morning I woke up, and AI isn't typically something that I use a lot of. I'm just like a little bit more old school, I guess, in that. But ChatGPT I have used like from time to time to just try to get information around something. And so I just woke up before the family one day and I just asked ChatGPT to plan me a family vacation for 9 days to Yellowstone in the Tetons. And I put like some other things in there like, we want to have some challenging hikes, but nothing too crazy. And I want to have some rustic places to stay, but I also want some places to stay where the kids can go swimming in a pool. And I just like put it in there conversationally. And it's crazy. Like, I know I'm not like blowing anybody's mind here with ChatGPT. And I think it's like maybe controversial because like the amount of server energy it uses or something. But anyway, for this, probably ended up saving a lot of energy, both mine as well as like me like fumbling around trying to find ways to plan this vacation. It was crazy, you guys. It spit out a 9-day itinerary with suggested hikes and suggested adventures like whitewater rafting, with a list of potential places to stay, kind of organized from more rustic to less rustic. So from like camping or staying in yurts up to the nicest hotel you can find within Yellowstone. And I went through and I booked it. I booked everything that it just told me to book. And maybe some of it won't be great. And now that you guys are hearing that I'm going out that way, maybe some of you will have some specific ideas in beta for me, and I'm totally open to that. But essentially, this allowed me to leap. Like I grabbed our flights, I grabbed a rental car, I grabbed an Airbnb and some cabins and hotels and made some adventure reservations. And I just did it all in a couple hours. And it started with that game of MASH with the family. So Sanni, thank you for that tip. Now I'm really psyched. I've been wanting to get the kids out and do camping and adventure. We're going to be able to do all of that now this summer. And this spring, we're going to do some camping just out here in Kentucky. So anyway, I got a lot out of this conversation. I hope you did as well. Beyond just the adventure part of it, I really loved her focus on communication and relationships and just climbing with people that are better than you at the same level and who are maybe newer to the sport than you. So yeah, Sanni, thank you. You're awesome. Oh, and something I wanted to say about the bonus episode. Typically, I have bonus episodes for these episodes for Patreon members and Apple subscribers. Sanni and I didn't have time to continue our conversation into a bonus episode, but the good news is I do have a bonus episode, and it's with Francis Sanzaro, who was last week's guest, the author of The Zen of Climbing. And we have a bonus episode from that conversation where we talk about Alex Honnold, so it's relevant to this conversation with Sanni. I asked Francis who he thought had more Zen in climbing, Alex Honnold or Chris Sharma, and I was kind of surprised at the answer, actually. And we talked about more about managing fear of falling and how we can use Zen practices or Zen ideas to manage that fear, the pitfall of attaching self-worth to a send, and that's something I've really been working through myself, comparing ourselves to others and how we might be able to work past that. Actually, a lot of themes that cross over with this conversation with Sanni. So if you liked this episode here with Sanni, you're really going to like this bonus episode as well with Francis, where we talk about all of those things and more, including Zen and the art of finger strength. You can get instant access to all of that right now at zero cost, actually, with a free trial over at patreon.com/thestruggleclimbing-show, or right there in your Apple Podcast player if you are an iPhone person. And you're also going to get instant access to more than 100 hours of other bonus content featuring the best of the best. I'm talking about Adam Andra, Chris Sharma, Nina Williams, Alex Honnold, Magnus Mitbo, and so many more athletes and coaches that have been on the show here. Plus, pro clinics on stronger fingers with Dr. Tyler Nelson, advanced bouldering with Allison Vest, moonboard with Ravioli Biceps, performance hacks with Hazel Finley, and so many more. It's all there for just a few bucks a month, or actually zero cost right now with that free trial, so you can try it before you buy it. Although, honestly, your support as patrons and subscribers is really what helps to keep this thing going. So if you got a few bucks, I certainly would appreciate your help as I'm jamming away here in the podcast/utility closet. Thank you. I love you. Big thanks and appreciation to all of our show sponsors who have brought you this episode here at zero cost. Way to go. You can check your show notes for links and special discounts from those guys that are only available to Struggle listeners, and there's some great discounts there, so check them all out. Actually, you can see all of the show's brand sponsors and special deals by popping over to thestruggleclimbingshow.com/deals. Hey, did you know that The Struggle is carbon neutral in partnership with the Honnold Foundation? Well, you do now, and it feels pretty good for me to write that check every month. They're doing such amazing work to bring clean energy to communities around the world. Y'all can get inspired and learn more about their amazing work over at honnoldfoundation.org, and toss them some love if you can. They're doing awesome stuff. And lastly, The Struggle is a proud member of the Plugtone Audio Collective, a diverse group of the best, most impactful podcasts in the outdoor industry. The show is produced and hosted by me, Ryan Devlin, and edited by the wonderful Glenn Walker. All right, that clips the anchors on this episode. Thank you so much for tuning in and supporting the show. If you want to do something that helps me out for zero cost, you could rate and review the show wherever you listen, or just share this with one of your climbing friends or the gym that you climb at. It really helps to get the word out there. I appreciate it. I hope your training and climbing are going great, and if you are struggling like me, well, just remember the struggle makes us stronger.